Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to learn how to name compounds if you're given a formula, okay? There are many steps to this process, and you're not going to learn all of them today. The first step that you're going to learn today is how to name or how to sort out the compounds into either an acid, ionic, or covalent, because each has different rules. And then the only naming that we're going to do today is the ionic naming, okay? Looking at your mixed naming part. So you should have your notes out in front of you. You should have a periodic table. You should have the back of the periodic table, which has the polyatomic ions on them. And then you should have the worksheet that we're going to work through this with. Got it? Now, the first thing you need to do is sort out the acids. For this class, all acids will start with an H. So, in that first column of 1 through 15, I want you to go through every compound formula, and if it starts with hydrogen, it's an acid. Okay, so you should have labeled number 15 and number 3 as acids, correct? Okay, now, for the next part, if they do not start with an H, so if they start with an H, yes, they're an acid. We'll get to acid naming later. If they do not start with an H, really difficult. You're going to count the number of capital letters. If they have 2 capital letters, you're going to determine if the elements are metals or non-metals. So that's the first thing we're going to do. And I'm going to color code this so that my metals are going to be blue and my non-metals are going to be green. You should color code this. Okay, here we go. Li2O. We're not concerned with the subscripts just yet. All of this will come together, but if I give you all the information at the same time, you're going to go into information overload and shut down. So, number 1, LiO. It has 2 capital letters, L and O. L goes with Li, so that's lithium. O is oxygen. You're going to go to your periodic table. Now, when you are on your periodic table, we have talked about the metalloids and the staircase. For naming purposes, what's going to happen is that staircase is going to become a hard and fast rule. Everything to the left of the staircase, except for hydrogen, is going to be a metal. Because I am all about making life easy. So this are all metals. That's not working. Oh well, okay. Lithium, aluminum, all of them, all metals. Hydrogen is a non-metal. 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 And then everything to the right of the staircase. Hydrogen is a non-metal. Hydrogen is a non-metal. and then everything to the right of the staircase would be a nonmetal. So, lithium is in the metals, oxygen is a nonmetal. So, metal, whoa, that's big. And I'm circling lithium in blue and circling oxygen in green so that you see that it's a metal and a nonmetal. Now, on your notes, if it is a metal and a nonmetal, it's ionic. Now, that's all we're going to do for number 1 at the moment. We're going to go back and name all of these, but not at the moment. Okay, now on to number 2. Number 2, 2 capital letters. You need to get used to seeing Cl together as chlorine and not as Ci. It's not carbon and iodide. It's Cl, chlorine. So there's 2 capital letters. If there are 2 capital letters, the first thing we do is figure out if they are metals or nonmetals, which means you pull out your periodic table. F is to the right of the staircase, that's a nonmetal. Cl is to the right of the staircase, that's a nonmetal. On your notes, nonmetal is covalent. Now, sometimes you will see covalent be called molecular. They're the same thing. They're interchangeable. In our class, we're going to use covalent. If you see molecular, it's okay. Don't freak out. Life will go on. Okay. Number 4 is K2SO4. How many capital letters are there? 3. 3 capital letters. So, on your notes, if there are 3 or more capital letters, it's ionic. You have to find the polyatomic ion. So, in an ionic bond, there is always 2 parts to the ionic bond. There's a cation and an anion. Just like in a marriage, there's a man and a woman. In an ionic bond, there's a positive ion, the cation, and a negative ion, the anion. So when you see an ionic compound, you always want to look for the 2 parts. There's always going to be 2 parts. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now, that means that K, S, and O, 2 of those parts go together. 2 of those capital letters go together. If you look at your polyatomic ion sheet, which is on the back of your periodic table, these are a list of all of the polyatomic, well, not all of them, but most of the polyatomic ions. If you go down to nearly the bottom, here is SO4. It has a 2- charge, so it's the anion, and it's called sulfate. So, we know that nonmetals, so now we know that potassium is a metal, and SO4 one thing is that S and O are both nonmetals, but in this case, I'm not concerned with that. I'm more concerned with the fact that they are now the anion. So because nonmetals always form anions and metals always form cations, I'm going to use the same color to label metals and cations and nonmetals and anions. Okay. K2SO4. If there are 3 letters, it is always ionic in this class. Okay? So, number 5. SNS. 2 capital letters. If it's 2 capital letters, determine if it's a metal or a nonmetal. SN is right here. It's to the left of the staircase. It is a metal. S is sulfur. It's right here. It's a nonmetal because it's to the right of the staircase. So that makes that bond metal, nonmetal equals ionic. Okay, now what I'm going to do is with these 5, I'm going to go through how to name them. For today, all you are doing with naming is the ionic. So, lithium and oxygen. On your notes, ionic naming. Step 1, name the cation and the anion. So I have lithium and I have oxygen. Step 2, change the ending of the anion to "ide." Now there's no hard and fast rule how many letters you take off of the word. You kind of have to say it in your head until it sounds right. Like oxygenide does not sound right. Oxide, oxide, like it's oxide. Okay? So you kind of have to just keep saying it in your head until it makes sense. And then you will be good to go. So, lithium oxide, does it have a multivalent cation? We are not going to do this just yet. We will be adding Roman numerals next time. Okie dokie? Now, covalent is next class. Acid, next class. So, ionic, number 4. We're going to name the cation and the anion. The cation is potassium. The anion is a polyatomic ion, so you're going to look at the chart to get the name. SO4 is sulfate. So I have named the cation and the anion. If the polyatomic is the anion, which it is, sulfate is the anion, do not change the ending to "ide." Do not change the ending to "ide." So, the name of this ionic compound is potassium sulfate. Okay, ionic. Number 5, SN is tin, S is sulfur. If there's only 2 capital letters, I'm going to name the cation and the anion. Then I'm going to change the ending of the anion to "ide." So it's not sulfuride, it's sulfide. And then, does it have a multivalent cation? We're skipping that step for today. So just be tin sulfide. Okay? Okay, now your task is to go through 1 through 60 and sort them out as acids, covalent, or ionic. If they are ionic, you are going to name them. So the only thing you are naming are the ionic, but you are going to determine whether 1 through 60 are covalent, acids, or ionic. So I'm going to work through 6 through 15 with you so that you get the pace of what you're doing. Number 6, 1, 2, 3 capital letters. 3 capital letters means I need to find the polyatomic ion. This problem made it very easy because they put CO3 into parentheses. So I know that CO3 is my polyatomic ion. When I look at my chart, it's carbonate and it has a negative charge, which makes it an anion. So carbonate is my anion. Cobalt, CO, is a metal because it is to the left of the staircase, and that makes it a cation. Next one, number 7. So this is ionic, excuse me. I forgot to. Number 7, 1, 2 capital letters. My job is to determine if they are metals or nonmetals. Go to the periodic table. N is to the right of the staircase, that's a nonmetal. O is to the right of the staircase, that's a nonmetal. Nonmetal is covalent. UO2. 2 capital letters. Determine if it's a metal or a nonmetal. U is down in the actinide series, but even though it's down below, it is still to the left of the staircase, so it is still a metal. O is oxygen. Oxygen is a nonmetal. Metal, nonmetal is ionic. Number 9, calcium fluoride. 2 capital letters. When there's 2 capital letters, you go to the periodic table and determine if they are metals or nonmetals. Calcium is to the left of the staircase. It's a metal. Fluorine is to the right of the staircase. It's a nonmetal. Metal, nonmetal is ionic. CSE, 2 capital letters. When there's 2 capital letters, you look at the periodic table to determine if they are metals or nonmetals. C is to the right of the staircase, so it is a nonmetal. SE is to the right of the staircase, so it's a nonmetal. Nonmetal is covalent. P4F8. Only 2 capital letters. When there's only 2 capital letters, you go to the periodic table to determine if they are metals or nonmetals. P is to the right of the staircase. F is to the right of the staircase. They are both nonmetals. Nonmetal is covalent. CRS, 2 capital letters. When there are 2 capital letters, you go to the periodic table to determine if they are metals or nonmetals. CR is chromium, and it's to the left of the staircase. That makes it a metal. S is to the right of the staircase. That makes it a nonmetal. Metal, nonmetal is ionic. Zinc, oxygen, 2 capital letters. When there's 2 capital letters, you go to the periodic table to find out if they are metals or nonmetals. Zinc is to the left of the staircase. It's a metal. Oxygen is to the right of the staircase. It's a nonmetal. Metal, nonmetal is ionic. SiO, 2 capital letters. 2 capital letters means go to the periodic table. Si is to the right of the staircase. It's a nonmetal. Oxygen is to the right of the staircase. It's a nonmetal. Nonmetal, nonmetal is covalent. Now, you're going to go through, and every one of those formulas that you said was ionic, you're going to name. So starting with number 6, back to the naming rules. If there are 3 or more capital letters, you're going to find the polyatomic ion. We did that. You're going to name the cation and the anion. The cation is cobalt. The anion is the polyatomic ion carbonate. And if the polyatomic ion is the anion, you do not change the ending to "ide." Okay? Mm-hmm. Number 7 is covalent, so we're skipping that for now. Number 8 is ionic, so we're going to name it. The cation is U. U is uranium. Uranium, oxygen. The anion is not a polyatomic ion, so we're going to change the naming to "ide." So it's uranium oxide. Number 9 is ionic. We're going to name the cation and the anion, and then change the ending to IDE. Calcium, fluorine, not fluorine, it's FLUO, not FLOU. And we change the ending to "ide, so calcium fluoride. Ten is covalent, so today we're skipping it. 11 is covalent, today we're skipping it. 12 is ionic. Name the cation and the anion. The cation is chromium. The anion is sulfur. We change the ending of the anion to "ide, chromium sulfide. Zinc and oxygen are ionic. We're going to name the cation, we're going to name the anion, and then we're going to change the ending to "ide. So it's zinc oxide. Now, the expectation is that you will have all of these labeled as ionic, covalent, or acids, and if they are ionic, that you name them by next class.